Welcome to the first episode of the SciComm podcast powered by Chrysalis, wherein we discuss some of the latest scientific innovations with the innovators themselves while highlighting their social implications. I am your host, Ashwin Anantanarayanan. Alongside me is my co host.
Hi, I'm Rahul here.
So, Rahul, why don't you tell our audience about what we are going to talk about today?
Yeah, sure, Ashwin. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. So, as we all know that we are in the unprecedented times, our COVID-19 has been with us. It's been over a year, and still we are suffering from it. So, we can see that in colleges, some students are being called back, and many colleges are still running remotely. But the main problem which we all are facing, be it college administration or general public, is the thing of social distancing. Because given the crowd proximity and the closeness population, it is very difficult to maintain the social distancing guidelines as well as keep a check on it. So here step in a group of five researchers from IISER Bhopal, comprising of four scientists as well as an undergraduate science student, who have developed a low-cost AI-enabled crowd and mass monitoring system to help this cause. They are fighting this in the way they know it best, through science and technology. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce our guest for today and get the podcast started. So, firstly, we have with us Dr. Sujit TB, who is an associate professor in the EECS department, which stands for Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. Nextly, we have with us Dr. Mitradeep Bhattacharjee, who is an assistant professor in the EECS department, and alongside him, we have Dr. Shantanu Talukdar, who is also an assistant professor in the ECS department. Next, we have Dr. Venkateshwar Rao, who is an assistant professor in the chemical engineering department. And lastly, but not the least, we have with us Kasi Viswanath, who is a third year undergraduate DSMS student. So, sir, we welcome you all to our first episode, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi guys, thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about our like whatever best we could do to fight COVID. And Sujit will give you the details. I can give you a little bit of introduction that this all things started a long time back, while last year actually the lockdown started. Okay, and after that, like you know that there's 3 months full lockdown all over the country, and then slowly the academic institutes, or like all other places, government offices and all, the academic institutes also opened up, and then we some of us who stays outside, and they are also coming back to our offices, and then slowly the students also started to come in to the campus. And then initial period, like there was very less number of people, so there was not much trouble with all this mask and social distance. And people are more careful about this COVID thing because that time it was really new, right? Now, as the time goes on, as you understand that the people also get frustrated with all these regulations and they get little bit of reluctant in following them up. And then we could see that all those students who are pretty young and then dumping rules on them is also very difficult, and also they also sometimes like intentionally or unintentionally they can't follow all the strict rules, right? So then we are thinking about, okay, whatsoever we need to ensure that somehow this wearing mask, and then keeping at least 3 to 6 feet distance between one person to another is maintained, right? And for that, the like manual monitoring is very difficult because number of students are increasing, number of people in the campus is increasing, and then they are all over the place, whether in hostel, whether in shopping area, or whether in cafeteria or different academic buildings, right? So then we came up with this idea of automatically incorporating this kind of monitoring system, monitoring, or at least what we can say that alarming system, where if it detects some kind of violation of these two rules, like if somebody is not wearing mask, or somebody is people are too close to each other, then it will generate an alarm to make them aware that okay, the rules are violated. Now it is up to the people; they have to follow the rules because it is there for their own protection. Now I think Dr. Sujit can put some more details about the innovation, whatever we have worked on.
No, so basically the idea is we want to minimize the workload of the security personnel because they are the first line of so-called defense within the campus, right? So everywhere they have been deployed to either enforce it or to make sure that people are following the rules and things like that. So, but the number of resources are very limited. So you want to optimize their use inside the campus. So we thought, okay, fine. So anybody in Unity C. So we thought, why not use camera, and then we have been playing a bit around with Raspberry Pis and Jetsons. So I thought, okay, let's use Jetson because anyhow you needed some kind of a deep learning inside. So Jetson Nanos would be a better option for this. And then that was the same time around which Kashi was playing around with doing a little bit of, I think if I'm not wrong, number plate detection, stuff like that at his home. Then we thought, okay, fine, anyhow, we need this inside the campus. So we asked him if he can relocate and then start working on the project. Because at the end of the day, okay, we typically have ideas and we need students to implement it to prove whether it's going to work or not work, right? So yeah, so he has been pretty handy on that. So maybe he can give you much more details about the issues and things that went off, and then the discussions followed, and then to make sure that it is in the current state as it is like a product that you can actually see.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that wonderful answer. So I wanted to know that all of you have very various research backgrounds. Like Professor Sujit, you have a background in robotics and aerospace. Professor Shantanu and Mitradeep, you have a background in sensors and systems. Whereas Professor Venkateshwar Rao, you have a background in fluids and their interactions. So how did you all come together for this project? Like, how did all the various departments come together to contribute to this?
They had put all us in the same building, they're next to each other. That's the easiest to start with. No, but I think the story was actually we wanted to start. We started with the oxygen concentrator. So there, that is a triggering point for us. Like Venkat with his chemical engineering background, so he knows much more about the systems inside than. So we are mostly on the automated side. So Shantu and Mitradeep were part of the sensing team to detect all the sensors. So basically, like what is our oxygen concentration that's coming out, things like that. So I was more like a
Overall supervisor.
supervisor.
So we are kind of working under Dr. Sujit. And it's not jokes apart. The thing is like that. See, it is not only one single thing because somehow it catches the eye because this is a final product you can see. But there are so we actually worked like started this as a team and we took multiple projects in hand. Okay, and which are still going on. Okay, and this is the all over the major idea was that how we can fight COVID in whatever aspect we can. So, like as Dr. Sujit was saying, that the oxygen concentrator was the first thing what we started, and at that time during the lockdown also we took like institute has provided a special permission, and we used to show that to the police persons to come here to the institute. So during the lockdown, while nobody was coming, we were actually coming to the institute, and then by the time the institute really opened, we finished the first prototype of the oxygen concentrator, whatever we built. Now the thing is that is nothing new because it is there available as a commercial product, but we could make a low cost system. That was the USP of the product, and now we are also working on the portable system. Okay, and along with that, then this AI/ML based system which could detect social distancing and mask, and then UV based sanitization. Many other projects are also going on. and we are part of the all over these COVID related projects. So all four of us are contributing in something, some way or the other, in some of the projects. Like
So the whole thing is about technology is a part. Okay? So we're not entering the science of it.
But initially, you want to say like we four of us started this project. There was no student was there.
right,
We four like we sat on the floor, we fixed everything. It's like we started on the floor, like from the scratch.
So my office was like a garage.
And
That's
we used
great.
to go to the city to buy small things also.
yeah, we spend so much of time in that Hamidia Road
Yeah.
buying all these valves, then your ICs, your solenoid valves, pipes, and things like that. Okay, and also with the drill machine, we are like one guy is holding, one guy means one from four of us is holding a big plywood, and another guy is drilling, which we are not a really expert of, but that time we four only was doing that, sitting on the floor on in main building, and people sometimes something blasted in the compressor, and people came running that what happened, and so that okay, we are trying to make something. So and then once the students came, like you guys came in, then our job became easier, because now we can put everything on you and we can
Yeah.
only give the ideas. So yeah,
Yes.
that's how it
Many things
started.
came out during that discussions. So this is how it started. That is how we all started working on different things. It started with one thing, then went to many other places.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful insight into what actually went behind doing all this, making all this. So, as we know that this device uses artificial intelligence and machine learning principles, and it has a high definition camera which is connected to a microchip computer. So, could you explain like what is the working behind this? How does it actually work?
It's basically like image based, right? Image and machine learning algorithms behind to detect the people. Right? So it's not super high definition, but it's a very low cost camera. So you have a Jetson Nano. So instead of you might be using Raspberry Pis or something like that, embedded computers. So Jetson Nano is a high end part of it, which has a GPU inside. So you use the images, then you train using a CNN kind of a network, right, to get the bounding boxes for each and every person. So you get boxes for the number of persons, and then you basically like use the number of pixels to find what is the exact distance. Okay, it won't be exact; it approximate distance that you are looking at. So for that to know, you have, because camera doesn't have the depth part, so you need to calibrate it. Like say you need to put two people at different locations, and then see what is the number of pixels that happens. So you do the calibration part separately, and then you use that to basically like train your network, and then you test it on the. So, but typically when you train, you don't train it on the Jetson now. Rather, you use a high-end GPU machines that I have in my lab. So you train with that because it's much faster than the training on this. And then when you test it, you bring it onto this, then test it on the machine. Yeah, so during a lot of testing, there will be a lot of crazy stuff that happens. I think Kashi would have given you nice stories around that. So the very first prototype that he did was, I think it took one image. After 7 seconds, it gave back the reply. So within that 7 seconds, if you had put it anywhere, right? So people just pass away and then go, and then if and nobody is there, oh, social distance has been detected. So you get all such kinds of initial phases, and then you start to look at okay, where I can start optimizing the code, and where is the issues that is creating so much of delay. So yeah, so but I think you should get hold of Kashi to get all these stories of making the product to an optimized level.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So this device uses principles of AI and machine learning, and we observe now that this artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, they are all the buzzwords of the modern times. So how would you define these terms in a nutshell? According to you, what would you say? What is artificial intelligence and machine learning?
AI and ML, people use it just like any other words. So if you look at it as a bigger picture, so ML is a subset of AI. AI is the biggest umbrella. Under that, you have machine learning. So inside machine learning, you have the deep learning. This is some small part of it. Right? So, but now because they're catchy terms, so they just use AI ML everywhere. Because when the ML is a part of AI, you just use AI, right? So once you tell it is an artificial intelligence, which is basically when AI the word started, it's in 60s and 70s. Like you might have seen all the Back to the Future or whatever it is, and then many other sci-fi movies. Right?
Cyborgs rising up
Yeah.
in this six.
So it talks about it basically like you want to create the Turing machine, which is basically like for the humans, which you want to, it should interact the way humans do. So then you have all the logic and stuff like that goes into the AI, the core AI one. But a subset of that has part of this is basically like your machine learning, and learning as such is a part of your AI. So in machine learning is where you have all the neural networks and there are different kinds of variants of that pop into the machine learning aspects. And deep learning is a more recent one wherein, so I think if you see, I think it's in early 2000s is where there was a huge bottleneck with the neural networks. So people could not break that 70 to 80, around 80% accuracy. It was becoming very difficult. And then, of course, the system started to become more computationally powerful, and then also the mathematics behind this to start the CNNs and those started to work. So until then, there was some big black hole. Like anybody who goes to neural network, oh, but you can't do anything more than that, more than 80% of compositions.
Thank you for the answer. I'm sure it will inspire a lot of students in our college who are motivated to do projects in these backgrounds. So,
Yeah, but at least after seeing this part, right, people should not tell blindly AI and ML. They should know what AI and
yeah,
ML will be at least.
Yes, sir.
yeah, we need to make aware that what does it actually comprise of.
Yeah.
So all these principles of software, using these concepts to apply it into real applications, we require the hardware part also. So this device uses a lot of sensors and microchip. So could you give us any idea that what are actually these sensors and what type of sensor is used?
This is only camera as the sensor. It is only the camera.
Only the camera.
Okay, okay. The camera itself is the sensor.
Only
Yeah.
sensor
Camera
part
is
is
the-
only the camera, and we have, if you talk about actuator, then we have a speaker. It
Okay.
just generates some kind of alarm or recorded voice message.
Okay. So this device, it involves so many components. So how did you maintain to keep it low cost? Like,
Yeah, mostly the target was to first achieve the objective of detecting the social distancing and mask, whether the norms are followed or not. So, as Sujit already have mentioned, all learning part and training part was done in a separate GPU, right? So, once these things are optimized, we went back to the components and have seen different options that are available, and whichever options were cost effective, we took that and have implemented in this device, keeping in mind that we should make it as much affordable as we could, whatever version we have right now. But definitely there is always a scope of even reducing the cost further. So as of now, we use the basic components that is required for this. However, as I've said, that the designing part and etc. Was done in a much uh, expensive instruments and sophisticated instruments. So that is how we went about this.
If you talk about this particular system, then it has only basically three components. One small camera, which is very low cost. You can buy it over Amazon, Flipkart, this kind of thing also. You have a speaker and a Jetson Nano the boards or the embedded computer. So the major cost is only for that, and the casing and everything, these are 3D printed actually in with our lab 3D printers.
When if you go for the bulk production, it goes the price reduced drastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
or alternatively, you can see if we can make the codes a bit more lightweight and then efficient. See, the thing is, as of now, if I'm not wrong, it uses a YOLO framework. But if you go for a tiny YOLO, which can take the footprint to be much smaller, okay, and then you can go for, instead of a Jetson, you can go for a Raspberry Pi. So that would reduce the cost to by 60%.
Okay, sir.
But
Thank
but the thing is, when you start to making your algorithm smaller, right? So the probability of getting errors is increasing. So you should live with that. So you want high accuracy, then it takes more computing power. It's
So you have to compromise the accuracy a bit when you are going for a low cost solution.
And while we talk about the cost of the system, we mostly talk about the material cost, not really the R&D cost and like Kashi work in the system or whatever facilities are used available in lab. So we are not considering those.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. So, what are your plans for expanding this into large scale, like bringing it to the public? Do you have any plans for that? Because this is required. It is a need of the hour, and it is required in the general at a lot of places.
So currently we have put this in open source condition. So it's now an open source solution. So as time progresses, if people show more interest, they can take it up and produce it in a large scale. I think Venkat can give a better idea.
Yeah, we received the
A few communication.
somebody requested us.
Yeah.
So you got two requests, one from
Maharashtra government.
UN representative in Maharashtra, and the other one was from a school in Gurgaon.
So they want to use this system for their own, maintaining those norms. So the point here is we already made this open source. Now, if somebody wants to make it on their own, they can make it. And so this is what the plan is. Once the technology is there, so that everyone can use it the way they want.
Okay, sir. That's great to know. Hopefully, this will be used in many places and help in controlling the social distancing.
Yes.
So, to move on to my next question, I wanted to know that since this installed in the ISER Bhopal campus, so has it had any impact up to now in controlling the social distancing?
Look, so we had.
That's they have to answer.
Yeah, you should
Answer that. Students answer that.
Sir, we are at
Where in the
home
canteen
now
area,
currently.
we have seen very nice behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, behavior in the sense mass behavior that are gathering near that canteen area once it is deployed. So from that behavior, we could understand that definitely it has an impact on the social distancing norms and public gatherings. Now it's also up to the people when they get the alarm. So the device at most can give you an alarm that you are not following it. But if you really don't want to follow it, you can go ahead with it. The idea was sometimes by mistake we come close to each other. We forget that we should follow the social distancing. We forget when we are walking, when we are taking tea, and etc. So the idea is this device will give you one proper alarm in those situations. And if you don't get alert, then what else can be done? So we have seen different responses. We have seen people are also,
Moving back side of the camera.
Yeah, moving back side of the camera once it gives alarm,
Yeah.
and again they come close to each other. So students are also, we have seen that when this gives alarm, they also while walking starts following the social distancing suddenly. So that definitely that gives an indication that the machine is working. I mean, it is actually serving its purpose. But after people cross that, and this view of that camera, then again they start coming close to each other. So that should not be there. That much is dependent on the behavior or.
So I can cite one incident where this machine was shouting like social distancing is violated and all this, right? And then people who are there and maintaining social distance and wearing also wearing masks, they start looking into that who is actually violating it. And then the guy who was not wearing his mask, he also started to pull it up so that the people are looking into him that he is not following. So he becomes concerned and then he starts following it. So that's a indirect effect, but this kind of things also has been
So
observed.
it's a social responsibility. The job of this device is to remind you your social responsibility. Then you have to be responsible to make the society better. That is the bottom line.
Yeah. So it's a way to make them conscious that yeah, you are breaking this guidelines. Please follow it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, I'd like to ask a question. I want to this specifically for Dr. Sujit. So now we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. These are buzzwords, of course. But how do you determine whether to use AI and ML in a problem? Sometimes it takes extra effort and it costs a little bit more. But then it doesn't give you much output at times. So how would you like to address that?
So if you want to use, so basically like you want to do a learning, right, when things are not in a deterministic fashion. So when there is a stochasticity or uncertainty involved, you can't anywhere make any kind of a deterministic decision, right? So it's like this, okay? So you, let's say, uh, the bus, not the bus, but rather the earlier trains, right? They never used to come on time. Okay, so you had only one choice which you always used to make. You never used to learn, okay, what is the pattern of that? What if they say 9 o'clock the train comes, whether it comes or not comes, you just go there. And then you come to know later. So you want to do some kind of a prediction about what is going to happen, right? So and then when things are not in the same fashion, then the best way is to learn over time. Like this is what is happening, right? So I just let's say that if you when we started, let's say the putting the social distancing, we had certain aspect of how the crowd behavior would be, and then we designed it. But then over time, we have seen like the way in which the behavior changes, and then now we need to think about okay, how many number of places that I need to put so that people can continuously maintain it. So it's so you want to learn stuff when things are in a stochastic or uncertain manner. So if things are more deterministic, I think you already have a station or you already have the machinery to solve those problems. So that's where your machine learning, so-called learning through even any kind of an artificial techniques that helps you there. So now then you want to ask the bigger question is okay, why should I use only this particular technique, not any other technique, right? So for that you need to first is understand all the techniques so that you can answer okay, this particular technique is going to help us in solving the problem quicker. Okay, it doesn't need so much of data or whatever it is. Okay, so other ones is you can work. So but then you need to understand a bit more. So something like it's like before right, same algorithm, but each of them will have a different complexities. To understand that you need to go through the algorithm and then get some hands-on experience and then say okay, for these kind of set of problems we should try to use a particular algorithm that is more suitable to it, and it's much more computationally cheap or it gives you better results in that particular case. So it's like even let's say estimation filters or anything like that. There are so many number of filters, but nobody can tell you like you have to use this particular filter. And other thing is comfortability. Okay, you may be not good at so stochastic or too much of statistical theory or anything like that, but something more involved in learning a little bit at least to a certain extent. So then you will never try to explore those areas. So you will try to be more comfortable with what is you can understand. So you want to go deep more into that and then try to explore what the maximum I can get out of this particular algorithm. So these are different aspects that you need to know.
Mhm. Yes, sir. That was very very insightful. So, Another question I would like to ask is, I mean, how we've been you're into this field for quite some time now, I perceive. So how has development of technology of this sort changed from when you started out in electrical engineering or chemical engineering or computer sciences, and to when you compare it to today? How is it different?
Have you used floppy disks?
Yeah.
Do you know
Some
floppy disk? Do
floppy
you know
disk.
floppy disk?
I've
No,
seen that.
uh, I don't know, sir. I've only
At least
seen.
you have seen pictures.
You know, you
You
know
have
the
seen pictures of that.
So we use floppy disks. Okay, from floppy disk to now you have what is
pen
it?
drives with the
Pen drives with 64 GB, 128 GB. That is the kind of technology evolution has happened. Right? So and we have lived through the entire process and then you try to still evolve it.
yeah.
Yeah, so with improvement in technology, even let's say Nitradip and Shantanu, they are developing new technologies, new sensors that are low cost but are cheap and they're much more versatile for different kinds of applications. So that happens because of changing the technology. We can't just go to the same old previously how they used to do. We will also want to do, right? So yeah, so with technology, things are more available. It makes things much more simple to work with. It gives you the facility that is required to develop the required system.
Hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but Shantanu and Mithundeep can talk a little bit more about their new sensors that they are developing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk
One of
maybe
the-
some other time. We can
Yes.
talk about the sexes.
Yes, sir. And sir, Dr. Venkat,
Yeah.
sir,
You
you
have
studied
RC online.
in chemical engineering.
Yes.
How would you respond to it as far as chemical engineering goes? We got a good insight from the electrical engineering and computer science perspective, but how about chemical engineering?
Yeah, I'll tell you one a simple example. Okay. You know the screwdriver, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a mechanical tool, right? But
Mm-hmm.
everybody use that tool, not only mechanics. Correct? Similarly, with the languages, AI, the model predictive controls, lot of people, even the chemical people also they use in the plants. The chemical plant, suppose you have control the plant, you need control systems and you need the updated control system like model predictive control theory. Okay, so all these tools are like can use in different fields. It's not only for the computer science or electrical field. You can use these techniques in different fields also. Okay, they are like tools. You should know where to apply, how to apply these tools. Okay, even I work on the image processing also. So I work on the self-propulsion of artificial particles. They are in the size of few microns. If I compare with the Sujit work, Sujit also does the same kind of work. He takes the pictures of the bigger size particle like human beings, trees, plants like that, and he will locate their position, GPS locations, everything, and from that he'll get the data like position, speed, and everything. I do the same thing, but the levels are much micron size level. I capture the images of the bacteria and then we calculate the velocities, directions, all those things. Okay. So if I say that okay, these are two different, no. The technique is same, tool is same. Both of are using image processing, but the end application is completely different. Okay. So this is the thing. As a student, you should know how to use these tools. Okay. Don't think as these are subjects. Okay. Like okay, I know C++, I know C++, like Python. You should know how to use that thing in your field because they are tools. Okay, they are not restricted to one particular area. Okay,
Yes, sir.
It's like math.
yeah, it's like maths. The best example is this one, numerical methods. It's like mathematical department course, right? But everybody uses numerical methods, and you club numerical methods with the computer C program. You can develop a software called as computer fluid dynamics software or COMSOL. How does the COMSOL work? You have programming language and use the numerical techniques, and you solve the complex problems like the PDEs and ODEs. Correct. And everybody, all engineering streams, in every engineering you see we saw a lot of OD and PD problems. So it's all about how to use these tools, and you should know how to use this tool. You should have some idea about the tools.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was really amazing insight, sir.
So Ashwin, I think we have Kasi back with us here now.
Yeah, I think you should hear stories from him.
Yeah.
He even got late night calls threatening his his existence in ICER, whatever it is.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, pretty actually. Like I was waking up one fine day and then person like someone from ISA calls me and then threatens me like, "Do you have the right to keep it? It's a public place." I'm like, "It's a public place and we have rights. That's why we have kept it." People were so annoyed of this, the social distancing. Yeah.
So Kasi, could you share with us your experience of participating in this project?
Like I got involved in this was like I was interested in image processing and computer vision, like, and I used to have this contact with Sujit sir regarding my like what all I did and like what all courses or whatever I did. So basically I wanted like during this COVID time, it was a long time in my home. Like I never have like stayed in my home till that long, so I wanted a complete way off. So I asked Sujit sir, is there a way to bring me, and then is there some project? So he said like, yeah, there is a social distancing project, are you interested? And it's a computer vision. Yeah, like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll do that, no issue. Yeah, so that's how I got it. And then like then I started my collection of like this what all other stuff, like how can you minimal, like sir wanted it should be portable, it should have it should be less error, and it should give a people the idea like they're violating social distance. So they're like, yeah, so he wants a small portable social distancing, right? So I was into this stuff of like different algorithms in computer vision. So I got to like I clubbed a few moreover like even Medium was a big help for me. So like perspective, like some perspective projection in classical computer vision and object detection using YOLO, which comes to the deep learning part. So I could club this and come up with this the whole thing of social distancing API, which and then there was a one full month of trial and error. Like people were so annoyed. People like even like the cafeteria was crowded, but when we actually started keeping it, the places other than the visual, like the boundary of it, those places started getting overcrowded because people wanted to completely avoid the social distancing. Like this, it's like there was a speaker also, so they used to get alarmed, and then people were so annoyed. Even professors were so annoyed. Yeah, but we had fun in that's another part. Yeah, so similarly, that's how like that's the whole through way, a brief way of how we developed it, and then it was pretty fun. And then like we had this portable small machine which did pretty good, which is doing pretty good.
So the public is trying to avoid the places where the camera is placed.
No, the major part is like people are getting like the message like they are violating social distancing. So that was our main motive, and then they were concerned about it, and then people were also happy that many people approached me and then said that you did a good job, like someone is doing some AI, that's what the data science is about. So you're doing something in the institute which is like new. So that inspired me, that was a good point of this whole project, and then it was pretty impactful.
Hello.
Yes.
That's great to know that people are appreciating this application. So I'll hand over the mic to Ashwin, who will ask some questions to all of you.
Thank you so much, Rahul. I mean, you've been doing it's been really enjoyable so far, the talk. So now I think yeah, I'll take over. So I think this first question must be goes to Dr. Sujit. So Dr. Sujit, again, the thing is, sir, you've been made HOD of the new data science department here. So now, how would the data science department help in research of the sort you have done? and there's been a large influx of data science students from IITs, NITs, etc. So how are we? How are we going to? What sort of impact is that having in this kind of research? In research of this sort.
See, data science is required all over. Okay? So how much ever different programs comes, but still the number of students that come is very finite. Right? So the number of companies and people required all over countries in India, and then want to go even scale outside, right? It's much higher. So the demand is always going to be there. Okay, the only thing is where things are going to be different compared to IITs and IITs, because you always you want to have some utility, or say some uniqueness of your program. Is, let's say, I don't know, so let's say that Kashi takes it up, okay, a data science course or whatever it is. So, but then he's going to use in his main thesis, which is his main domain, is going to be right. So you have an unique confluence of both people coming from different sciences background, including engineering sciences, so all of sciences here. Okay. So, but as Venkat was telling, right, you all have these tools. So, what you should think about this is like the program or the main offered are basically these tools. How you are going to use is what to a certain extent, depending on the faculty's expertise, will tell you how you should be using these tools. So you can always go back to your primary domain of interest, right? Let's say image processing. You take the image processing course, but you can go and apply it to wherever you're from, either physics or biology or chemistry, wherever you want. You can still go and apply. But what happens is, in most of the cases, if you look at from the other's perspective, when we're seeing they treat these things as black boxes, right? Let's say if you ask Kashi, like he used YOLO or some stuff like that, right? So, but then many of them who use also YOLO or anything like that, they treat it as a black box. They will not go and understand what it does and what are its limitations, things like that. So that's where things become trickier. So that's where the DSC program will try to give you more insights or more information about what your box is all about than just a black box. So that's where you have the difference that comes on. Right? Like compared to your normal data science who's just going to use the available, GitHub is full of source codes. Anybody can then pick anything and then use it, but using is one, okay? But other thing is knowing what is inside so that I can do better usage of it is second. So that's why all these tools will help you in getting better understanding of it.
Yes, sir. So now you talk about data science being misunderstood or interpreted as a black box in many cases, especially for people in other disciplines, perhaps. So now, how do you think you can how do you think we can make data science understandable or accessible to all?
See, data science at the end of the day is all about statistics. Right, so the output of your the learning or anything is statistics that comes out of it, right? How good it is, or it's trying to learn that. Methods are the ones which are trying to solve the problem that you're facing. Okay, they try to give you a solution. Let's say you use a deep learning technique for, say, image classification or whatever it is. It gives you the probabilities, right? So with certain accuracy, I can tell you that this belongs to this particular class. So it doesn't tell you that it is actually that. Okay, so if you don't understand the statistics behind it, you just take, okay, the first one is coming, I'll just pick it up. So that's where the difference, where you have the program, okay, that helps you in better understanding, like why I should be picking it up, or should I be more testing before I pick it up, right? So that's where things gets more interesting, to get deeper into knowing what you're trying to do. Okay, using machine learning tools, or using image processing tools, stuff like that.
See, I can add this one actually. See, there's two things. You want to be user or you want to expert in that area. See, you want a user, you no need to know more depth of that things. Okay, suppose I have a code, I'll give you a code, you run the code, you get the output. It's a user. Okay, it's serving your purpose. But if you want to learn what is happening inside me, you should know everything about that subject, right? Suppose you want to be expert in that area, okay? Then you have to take that course, like that department. Or else, if you want to use the tools, just you should know how to use the tool. That's it. But you want to become an expert, you should know in depth what is happening inside. Okay, I think that's what that you get in the DSC course. You become an expert, not a user.
Yeah.
Sir, Ashwin, yeah, I would like to chip in here. Just a small follow-up question. So, sir, like as you are saying, in order to understand what goes inside this black box, so how important is it to learn the actual mathematics and statistics behind this instead of just applying the packages to use it?
See, if you are an ISER, I think in your second year you already have the basics of stats and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you should be easily able to handle that. What is coming out of it?
Okay,
Right,
sir.
right. See, as
that is a prerequisite. Yeah.
it is just it basically helps you in just let's say as a layman who wants to use it, right? It helps you with respect to that, but you may want to be more into it rather than see you are much more well trained in asking questions why it is happening or how is it happening. Okay, than in any other engineering schools or engineering colleges where they just tell you and then you just go blank with it, right? So as Venkat was telling, you want to be a user or you want to focus on. It's like if you are a user, right? So you want to know some parts of it, then some parts of black box. Okay? But on the other hand, you want to contribute towards the black box and towards the exact box. Then the kind of expertise that you need is different. Okay? So you will enter into more of computer science. But your goal is that you want to solve, let's say, the social good problems that are available in biology or in chemistry or economics or all over the world. Right? So your goal is that, okay, but you want to contribute towards the kind of, like I said, kind of learning algorithms that I want to do. So that it can do better and better. So on the other hand, you want to be a user. So you will try to understand what it does, what are its limitations, input and output, but you don't try to mess with it.
So
Okay, sir.
if I can add one more thing in some simpler way, that is, let's say that you are working with some experiment, okay, and you are measuring some current and some you have, let's say you are from chemistry, you have developed a new material, okay, and then you want to know the conductivity of that material. What you do, you just buy a DMM, right, a digital multimeter kind of stuff, and then you plug it in and then just measure the, or you apply some voltage, measure the current, and from that you get your conductivity. Now this kind of, so you don't need to really know what is there inside the DMM. You are using it as a user, right? And this approach goes on until everything falls in their place. But if something goes wrong in it, let's say your material is a superconducting material at room temperature, and you are supposed to get a very high current. Now the DMM has some kind of limitation. How much you use low voltage, it has a current limitation that it cannot give more than that amount of current. Okay, there's something called compliance current. Now you don't know much about that, so you just use it as a user without knowing its limitation or how this is supposed to work. Then you end up with the result, whatever you think that it is throwing out is correct. Okay, so that is the point. So how involved is your application? And for your application, you really need to know the tool inside of the tool. So it depends on that. If your application is very straightforward, that you are working with some kind of material which is pretty standard, and you will not get any kind of this kind of behavior, then it is fine. Go and use it as a black box. But if something goes wrong, then you will not be able to troubleshoot, and you will be believing that wrong result.
Yes, sir. That's a good analogy to compare this.
Yes, sir. I have another question. Now we have the way software is evolving with time. I think it's going at exponential speed, is software development. What about hardware, sir? How is hardware keeping up with software being developed?
So I guess Mithu can pitch in here.
Yeah, so hardware and softwares are in many cases interconnected, right? So if you see the nowadays computers, you'll see that software, along with software upgradation, the hardware is also upgraded. So which is required. For example, if you want to run a very extensive software or code into a hardware, the hardware should have that capability to hold it. Otherwise, things will not run the way you want. And on the other hand, if you want to develop some process intensified code, you need a processor of that sort. Otherwise, you can't develop also. So they are interconnected to each other, and you will see with the development of software, be it the speed, be it the intelligence of that software, or be it the algorithm, you'll see an relation which is also improving the hardware in a similar pace. So over the period of say last 20 years, you will see both the component of a technology, software and hardware, have improved like anything, and that is I feel is will continue even in coming years as well.
And as Mithu is saying, I think we can also like pull in the example of transistors, right?
Yes.
Currently, we are at 5 nanometer technology, like
Yes,
in
right.
research level, at least they are doing
Even
the
3 nanometer. I think
even
it's
3
4.
nanometer also they are doing. And commercial, like the chips we use currently,
180 or something.
180 or something in that level. And if you use very sophisticated processors, you may get 45 nanometer, 22 nanometer, even 14 nanometer chips also. So while we are talking about this, like 5 nanometer, 7 nanometer node technology or 14 nanometer, that means the gate length we are talking about in a transistor. So as the software is improving, along with that, the transistor is also becoming smaller and smaller, and you are putting more and more number of chips in the same area, right? As Dr. Sujit was saying, that you are talking about that. Have you seen this floppy disk, which we saw in our childhood, and then this kind of big floppy disk used to hold something about 128 MB or KB, even 128 KB and so. And now in my purse, I have a pen drive which is like just a chip, and they hold 8 GB.
In fact, you will get 128 GB, 1 GB SD cards.
Yeah, SD cards. Yeah,
Nowadays available.
128 GB SD card.
Another example could be your operating system. If you see Windows 10, it requires a minimum specification in order to install it in a system, right? So you can't use this Windows 10 in the Celeron machines or the this other low processing units. So that is a example of how the hardware and software are going side by side, and I think it will continue because both are complementary to each other. So it will continue even in future as well.
I think the simple terms is like, no, the software is like a soul. You need a body to push that. Okay,
Right.
that's the hard way. Okay, you cannot run this separately.
So I would like to pitch in a point. Like,
Go ahead.
yeah. So, like, as you can see, the machine sitting in front. So that's a NVIDIA Jetson. That's having an integrated GPU. It's having a So it's just a top part the just part. That. So that runs Ubuntu 18.04, and it is having graphics such that you can play. It's a game called Dota. You can play Dota in that. I have played Dota in that. You just need a cooling unit. It's a very so that's when you see the small chip, it can run high computational, and even this it even runs deep learning models at very high frame rates. Even you can see the YOLO, it ran at 2 frame rates. The YOLO is like a 300 MB 300 MB size. Even it runs at 2 FPS, which is not bad. I would say it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can see this.
You can see it?
Yeah, good. A bit up if you could think. Yeah.
Yes, sir, we can see it, sir.
Yeah.
Mm. It's that was that gave
I
us.
will just give one more example. One more example. That is, have you heard about these gyroscopes which are used for navigation? Gyroscope is a kind of sensor which earlier days, even till date, it is used for navigation. So earlier days in the ships, okay, which in the ship they used to use this gyroscope. This gyroscope was pretty big like a one room, okay, something like that. And nowadays, while you are playing a motion game on your mobile, right? You tilt your mobile and then it is actually tilting the car or maneuvering the car. How it
Mm,
is doing? Because your phones also have the same gyroscope,
mm.
but this is now has become on a just a simple micro size chip. So you can think about the scale down. It has have happened for this kind of hardware also.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We are going to shorter and smaller technologies. But also, I had a short question that as we go to newer technologies, it also involves lot of computing, which requires lot of power also. So, how can we tackle the issue of efficiency in this case? Like, as we go to newer technologies, it requires lot of computing, but how can we do it efficiently?
Okay, so I don't think enough of us are in the.
Okay, I can tell one thing that is, see, while we are talking about newer technology, and so if you look into this, so I teach this thing as part of one of the course in ISARS. Okay, so this is scaling down we are talking about, right? Newer technology we are going, the transistor is becoming smaller, the devices are becoming smaller. So one of the major objective of making it in small size is because it will consume less power. Okay, so that is one of the major reasons that we are going down more and more in power actually. And now what we are, but you can say that okay, earlier also we are operating the same chip, let's say with the 12-volt battery. Now also we are operating the same chip with 12-volt battery. So what we are exactly gaining? It is the same power. The thing is that earlier the number of transistors used to run with the 12-volt battery was much lesser. Now currently the number of transistors you are running. So ultimately you are getting from the this performance you are getting better performance. Okay, with consumption of the same amount of power, and each device or each component is actually consuming less amount of power, and you are just increasing the number of components.
Mm.
In fact, nowadays different research areas evolved wherein people are doing research on low power circuits, low power
Right.
systems. So what they essentially do, they want to use less number of power for the same operation that they used to do previously. So
Mm.
that is how things are evolving. So when we are increasing the number of devices in a chip, we are also trying to reduce the power consumption in each device.
Okay, that's quite interesting that they're able to achieve more processing with lesser power.
Right.
Yes, sir. Now, another question that comes to mind again to Dr. Sujit is that you've been working under disaster. You've been doing a lot of disaster management related projects. You were looking at your when we were looking at your lab website. We saw a couple of projects related to flood management and robotics. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, what got you into disaster management, and what sort of spurred you to use your knowledge in that field out of any of this?
See, I'm very much interested in the robotics side, okay, and what I want to do is, at the end of the day, rather than just only on the papers, how can it help either the environment or the wildlife or the people? Right? So that is the end goal of it. So that's why I moved or used the applications areas where it could be directly affected rather than just only on the academic side. That's my personal interest on which that's the reason that I work on those kind of areas.
Yes, sir. So now this question specifically goes to Kasi. Kasi, you're a BSMS third year student. How was your experience working with the Dr. Sujit and team? And what was the biggest? What are some of the biggest takeaways from this project for you?
Yeah, so like I'm a BSMS third year from physics department. So basically, like in our institute, like not only in our institute, mainly physics comprises of like there is experimentation part, but lot of theory involves in it. Bigger theory. So even though those are interesting, like I found myself fascinated towards this computer vision and the computer science stuff. So initially I wasn't knowing anything. Like I was a part of this rocket and satellite designing club. So we were developing a drone. So we came to know Sujit sir, like when he was at Triple ITD. So we visited him during like a 1 week to just develop our drone. So when I went there, I saw like I got a huge exposure, like what is really happening in the world. So that's how I came in touch with Sujit sir and got to know that these are the stuffs happening. And then this COVID time gave me the opportunity of building much more. And then there was a course by Sujit sir which was intelligent robotics. So I was just auditing it. So it all gave me an total exposure towards this robotics and deep learning, computation, data science. So that's how I got in touch with Sujit sir. And coming to this project, like this project gave me a lot of insight. Like it's like both in the theory, like what you'd use in that, like as Sujit sir said, like he also asked me like what is really happening in YOLO. So I got to know about that, what is really happening in it, as well as like when we're coming to an implementation, how it works on, like not just developing things but also experimenting it and implementing it. That's also another scenario, trial and error stuff. So that also gave me a huge exposure from this project, and which helped me in later projects also. Like there was another project which was associated with it, like there's a UV robot. So there the electronic stuff which is associated to this COVID project. So those all gave me a brief view of this, and I'm happy that I'm part of Moon Lab under Sujit sir. Yeah, that's all.
That was a really inspiring story, and it's very telling of how much interdisciplinary collaborations and research acumen is promoted in ICERS. So finally, one question to all of you actually. What advice would you like to give to prospective innovators in the domain of artificial intelligence and machine learning, as in those who use artificial intelligence and machine learning to innovate things like a solution to create solutions to problems in daily life, like you have been doing. So what would you like to tell them?
Okay. So, see, what I can say is for innovation, there in general, whether it is AI and ML or any field I am talking about, okay, for any kind of innovation, it should not come like that one fine morning you wake up and you think like, okay, I need to innovate something. This is always driven by the necessity. Okay, so for any innovator, while so there is a saying, right, that necessity is the mother of invention, right? So first of all, if somebody is facing some problem, right? Okay, whether he or she like himself face that, or somebody else is facing that, and to get to know about that problem, right? Then the first thing comes into mind that okay, this is the problem. Then how do I solve it? Okay, then you have some, let's say, some idea. Okay, to give you one example, okay, you have some idea. Then the next thing comes into your mind that okay, you do I have those kind of skill set? Do I have those kind of skill set to address this problem? Now, I am talking about now for the in general for everybody and not specifically to AI ML or any particular field in general. Okay, so let's say you see find out some problem and then you see that okay, this may be a solution, but a solution might also have multiple aspects. Okay, in the sense to give you, let's say, okay, let me give you one very simple example. Okay, every
Mhm.
time your water tank fills up, right,
Mhm.
in your house, you need to turn off the pump.
Mhm.
Correct. Now, only after some water flows out, then only you know that okay, it is full. Okay, you don't have any indication that okay beforehand you will know that it is full. Then how do you take care of this kind of problem, or what can be a solution so that no water is wasted, right? So for that you think of okay, I can implement some kind of level sensor there, okay,
Mhm.
or water level measurement or pressure measurement or some kind of sensor there which will measure the measure the level of water and accordingly give you some kind of indication. Now you
Mhm.
may be from one kind of field, right, while you don't have much idea about sensor, but you can always get to know somebody or something who is more knowledgeable in that part and you can take his help, right? Then what kind of, once you know that the level is reached, then how do you transmit that signal to your
Mhm.
place? For that is another part, that is a communication.
Mhm.
Okay, so communication, you may be expert of communication, so you yourself solve that problem, and but you may not be the expert of sensor, so you take help for that. So
Mhm.
my whole point of telling this story is the attitude.
Mhm.
Okay, the attitude does matter, and if you, whether from whichever background you are from physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, if you have attitude to solve a problem, you will find out definitely a way. Okay, and nowadays, specifically these days, so much of resources are available online. You go to some YouTube video or NPTEL lectures or many of these hobbies have their videos and things like that, right? So if you need to learn something, you can easily learn. If you want to get somebody's help, that also is available, specifically in the academic atmosphere like in ISA.
Mhm.
So yeah, so you have to have that attitude to solve any problem. That's, or innovate a solution for some particular problem you are facing. That's
Mhm.
what my take is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to add, I would say that when you are working with AL and AI and ML, also focus on your own intelligence. It's not like building up the intelligence of your machine. Okay, so one has to be also work with their own intelligence so that it always improves the machine intelligence.
Okay. That was some interesting advice, sir.
Yeah.
And Dr. Venkat, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know much about AI and all, but what I can say that yeah, if you're really interested in this one, okay, really interested in this one, you can go ahead, do something good, which help for others also, okay, and but don't go just like people are everybody's taking these things. Okay, follow your heart. Okay, you really like it, go with that. Okay, just like
Yes.
those that okay now it's AI is we are hearing everywhere. Okay, those who have to learn AI. Maybe it's not your subject. If you are really interested, you take that.
Yes, sir.
I think in AI also we have segregated in different sectors like weak intelligence, then general intelligence, and then super intelligence. Currently, we are in the weak intelligence domain. So people are trying to at least achieve the intelligence of a human being, which is similar to which they call as a general intelligence. And then you get super intelligence, wherein the machine is even more intelligent than that of human beings. So that is how the trend is going. Currently, we are developing devices which only solves specific works. For
Mhm.
example, if you say self-driving system and all, the entire system is only solving one particular work. So that currently the target is whether the machine can think like a human being or not.
Mhm.
So one has to see how to improve these systems in order to achieve the general intelligence, and then ultimately the super intelligence where the machine will.
Yes, sir. So, Dr. Sujit, so what do you think?
See, I think as I said earlier, right, I think you need to look at data science and AI as a set of tools that are available to you. So there is one thing is because basically there are tons of jobs, so people tend to pick. Okay, I want to do this so that in their CV they can just put tick marks that I know so many ticks. And so instead of just that, I think you need to understand like will it that really solve the kind of problem that you want, right? So
Yes.
is there something much more simpler than I always need to use here? Always I need to use an machine learning. So it's like some simple statistics can help you just help doing that instead of always I want to. I think you need to be more aware of what kind of techniques that you want to use. And you as a student or in general, it's not like you need to know each and everything. You know what it does or something like that, so that you have a broad overview of different architectures and different. But try to understand where they have been used and why they have been used, so that will give you an understanding whether the kind of problem that you want to solve, if it fits and matches. If it has similarly, then you can think of start getting into that area because it has solved a similar kind of problem. So it's always like so I think there was this interesting story of okay, this is basically a joke, okay, but it was actually told by I think it's in Andhra, you know? So it's just like there's this cow story kind of stuff. So the boy knows only about the cow. Yeah. So any question that the teacher asks, okay, why is the airplane flying there? So then I think he tells something like, okay, again he brings back the story back to the cow, and then cow does eats and cow gives milk and blah 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 blah. So it's like just like that. So you should be more understanding about what is happening around them. Yeah.
But sir, don't go just blindly.
Yeah, just don't blindly about
Yeah.
and ML. So it has its good points, but that it highlights your CV. But that should not just be the only point that okay, it highlights my CV, so I just need.
Okay.
Rather have a better. So you just solve only one problem, but you get a proper understanding of both the problem and the solution. Don't just have a. I just used okay. I have a MATLAB command that gave me deep learning code. I used deep learning and then I got the result. Don't be like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Just one practical example. If you take all four of us, none of us has been expert or has been actually trained on AI and ML from our bachelors. Okay. So our PhD was something, masters, bachelors was some like the usual physics, chemistry, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, and those kind of stuff. Chemical engineering, right? But now we have all come together and joining hands in this kind of project. So it really doesn't matter that whether you are specifically getting there. Just build up your expertise in whatever you are interested in. Ultimately, it will be useful later on.
Yeah, I would say everybody should practice thinking. So you should think a lot rather than putting more information into your brain. So don't restrict your thought process. Keep on thinking, and I think other activities will work.
It's a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a 100-meter race.
Yeah, that's true. That's.
We always forget that in a marathon rather than in a 100-meter race, we always think about 100-meter. We want to get the finish line. We want to be the first in getting it. Then we lose the purpose of the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So open-mindedness and having a lot of patience and thinking broadly over a problem is an important aspect, which is very important for I feel for students of our generation. So, Kashi, do you have anything to say on this?
Yeah, so see, like I'm just a student, so I'm no one to advise or give comments on this. But like, just thing is like, I would say there's a big hype about AI and ML. Yes, AI and ML is developing, but yeah, as Sujit sir said, don't run behind. Like it's all a marathon. Like it's a marathon, not a 100-meter race. That's what it is. Like, if you're really passionate about it, go for it. Otherwise, just have an idea and then, like, see. There is a thing like if you know coding, then you are a bit ahead. Like if you know Python or something like that, like you'll be having an upper hand. Like in an upcoming world or in an upcoming career, you need to have coding. Similarly, that may be the case with AI and ML, but for current research work or of like for the current scenario, it's no big necessity or thing. But it's good that you have a basic idea or concept of the same. That's what I have to say or give comment about.
So yeah,
That was
Ashwin,
really
I had a short follow-up to this. So Kasi, I wanted to know from you that now, as a student, if we see now lot of resources are available online, as Sir mentioned, so should we try to know everything and be a master of none, or we should try to focus on something and be very good at it, and take help from others and collaborate to obtain their expertise in the other fields?
Yeah, see, as you said the word collaboration brings about everything. See, like totally mugging up and completely going blind about everything, which is like you see a word AI, you just take up the course in Coursera or like or whatever, wherever you see. That won't help you never. See, like you are interested, approach a good you should always like it's the student teacher relationship. You should have always have a like a guide, proper guide who can guide you through like otherwise you'll be just studying up everything and then hung up without anywhere, like you won't be having any progress in the field. So I would say like you just create your profile somewhere like where you can contribute, get attached to a community, see what's happening, then just put your taste in everywhere and get what is suitable for you, and then find a suitable guide and then proceed in the same path. I would say if that's the case with everything, even if you see in every field you see, that's the same thing. You should have at least a proper guide who can, because they have the experience and the know-how of how it works. They will guide you to through this path proper setting. I would say that is the thing. Otherwise, like mugging up, taking every courses, like I have completed 100 courses in Coursera, that won't help. That may help you a bit in CV, like you have completed, you have certificates, but finally you come into talent or when you come into your whatever your know-how in the field, that won't help you much in everything.
And to add up here, actually, we also don't, while you guys send your CV, we also know that the students can write anything on their CV. So really, we don't much care about that, whatever you have wrote 100 course of code, taken Coursera and all these things. Okay. And another thing is that you don't need to know everything, but you need to know where to find it when you need it. It may be some online resource, it may be some book, it may be another friend. Okay. So that is what is important.
yes,
Sir,
that was
thank you.
It's a simple thing. Like if you want to reach faster, go alone. If you want to go travel long distance, go with someone. Yeah.
yes, really interesting and amazing advice, which was really helpful, which for us, and I'm sure will be helpful for our audience as well. With that note, I'd like to conclude this conversation by first of all thanking all of our panelists here. For taking out time from their busy schedules and coming to help us to talk to us about their innovation and pursuing career paths in general. Now, on that note, a more important thing I'd like to say is COVID-19 cases are rising day by day today in today's times. So it is important that we keep ourselves safe. So, guys, stay safe, maintain social distancing, and yeah, do not forget to catch up on more episodes of the SciComm podcast. Thank you.